Geirrod and Agnar. Odin, as has already been stated, took great interest in the affairs of mortals, and, we are told, was specifically fond of watching King Haralding's handsome little sons, Geirrod and Agnar, when they were about 8 and 10 years of age respectively. One day these little lads went fishing, and a storm suddenly arose which blew their boat far out to sea, where it finally stranded upon an island, upon which dwelt a seeming old couple, who in reality were Odin and Frigga in disguise. They had assumed these forms in order to indulge a sudden passion for the close society of their protégés. The lads were warmly welcomed and kindly treated, Odin choosing Geirrod as his favorite and teaching him the use of arms, while Frigga petted and made much of little Agnar. The boys tarried on the island with their kind protectors during the long, cold winter season. But when spring came and the skies were blue and the sea calm, they embarked on a boat which Odin provided and set out for their native shore. Favored by gentle breezes, they were soon wafted thither, but as the boat neared the strand, Geirrod quickly sprang out and pushed it far back into the water, bidding his brother sail away into the evil spirit's power. At that selfsame moment the wind veered, and Agnar was indeed carried away, while his brother hastened to his father's palace with a lying tale as to what had happened to his brother. He was joyfully received as one from the dead, and in due time he succeeded his father upon the throne. Years passed by, during which the attention of Odin had been claimed by other high considerations, when, one day, while the divine couple were seated on the throne Hildskjalf, Odin suddenly remembered the winter's sojourn on the desert island, and he bade his wife notice how powerful his pupil had become, and taunted her because her favorite Agnar had married a giantess, and had remained poor and of no consequence. Frigga quietly replied that it was better to be poor than hard-hearted, and accused Geirrod of lack of hospitality, one of the most heinous crimes in the eyes of a Northman. She even went so far as to declare that in spite of all his wealth, he often ill-treated his guests. When Odin heard this accusation, he declared that he would prove the falsity of the charge by assuming the guise of a wanderer and testing Geirrod's generosity. Wrapped up in his cloud-hued raiment with slouch hat and pilgrim staff. "Wanderer calls me the world, far have I carried my feet. On the back of the earth I have boundlessly been." Wagner, Foreman's translation. Odin immediately set out by a roundabout way, while Frigga, to outwit him, immediately dispatched a swift messenger to warn Geirrod to beware a man in wide mantle and broad-brimmed hat, as he was a wicked enchanter who would work him ill. When therefore Odin presented himself before the king's palace, he was dragged into Geirrod's presence and questioned roughly. He gave his name as Grimnir, but refused to tell whence he came or what he wanted, so as this recitance confirmed the suspicion suggested to the mind of Geirrod, he allowed his love of cruelty full play, and commanded that the stranger should be bound between 2 fires, in such wise that the flames played around him without quite touching him, and he remained thus 8 days and nights in obstinate silence without food. Now Agnar had returned secretly to his brother's palace, where he occupied a menial position, and one night when all was still, in pity for the suffering of the unfortunate captive, he conveyed to his lips a horn of ale, but for this Odin would have nothing to drink, the most serious of all trials to the god. At the end of the 8th day, while Geirrod, seated upon his throne, was gloating over his prisoner's sufferings, Odin began to sing, softly at first, then louder and louder, until the hall re-echoed with his triumphant notes, a prophecy that the king, who had so long enjoyed the god's favor, would soon perish by his own sword. "The fallen by the sword Ygg shall now have. Thy life is now run out. Wroth with thee are the Disir. Odin thou now shalt see. Draw near to me if thou canst." Seaman's Edda, Throp's translation. As the last notes died away, the chains dropped from his hands, the flames flickered and went out, and Odin stood in the midst of the hall, no longer in human form, but in all the power and beauty of a god. On hearing the ominous prophecy, Geirrod hastily drew his sword, intending to slay the insolent singer, but when he beheld the sudden transformation, he started in dismay, tripped, fell upon the sharp blade, and perished as Odin had just foretold. turning to Agnar, who, according to some accounts, was the king's son and not his brother, for these old stories are often strangely confused, Odin bade him ascend the throne in reward for his humanity, and further to repay him for the timely draught of ale, he promised to bless him with all manner of prosperity. On another occasion, Odin wandered to Earth and was absent so long that the gods began to think that they would not see him in Asgard again. This encouraged his brothers, Vili and Ve, who, by some mythologists, are considered as other personifications of himself, to usurp his power and his throne, and even, we are told, to espouse his wife Frigga. Be thou silent, Frigg, thou art Fjorgen's daughter, and ever hast been fond of men, since Ve and Vili, it is said, thou Vidrir's wife didst both thy bosom take. Seaman's Edda, Thrope's translation. So that was Geirrod and Agnar, the 13th section of Chapter 2 of Myths of the Norsemen by Helene A Guerber, Odin. I will be working my way through this book section by section, and if there are any other public domain books that you would like for me to read, please leave a comment below. Did you enjoy this video? Then subscribe for more. Thank you for listening, and have a lovely evening.